But then in 1959, they had the West Coast Championships in Huntington Beach. And I talked my dad into let me enter and taking me down there. And it was kind of big that first year. I remember I was a little bit scared. And I think I got third in my heat or something. And I was like, wow, I beat two guys.
Today's a really fun episode. We have on the Surf Strong Show surf legend, artist, musician, Corky Carroll. What a great time hearing his history, him telling story, all his decades in the surf community, what he's doing now. And I just want to thank him for taking the time to be on the Surf Strong Show. We had a great time. Let's get to our interview with Corky Carroll.
I'd like to remind you to like, comment, subscribe to this and all of our episodes of the Surf Strong Show wherever you get your podcasts. For all show notes and links that we talk about in the episodes, you can go to surfstrongfit.com/podcast for this and all the past episodes. Thanks for joining us. It really means a lot.
Corky, thanks so much for being part of the Surf Strong Show. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here today.
Well, I rushed in from my office just to be here for this because I was stoked.
Nice.
Oh, I'm in my office.
You pulled me away from your true office on
I was already here, so what the heck? I'll do it.
Hey, I still thank you for it though. Hey, I like to start some of these episodes with remember back, if you can, the first new surfboard you got, what kind it was, if you can remember that, and what that felt like to get that first new board for you.
Absolutely. Well, it was back in the mid-1950s, and I was growing up on the beach in a little place called Surfside, which is sort of south of Huntington Beach and north of Huntington Beach and south of Seal Beach. I know where it was. And
it's still there.
Most of us kids, we'd surf on air mats or pieces of plywood with nails in them. Anything that would float, we'd surf. And the older guys had boards. And they were big, heavy wood boards back then. And they just leave them laying on the beach, rather than like drag them home because they weighed so much. But, we lived right on the beach. So I started kind of sneaking out the older guys' boards and, trying to learn to surf. But, the houses were right on the beach and they had pilings. And if you lost your board, it would hit a piling and put a ding in it. And I was always dinging the older guys' boards and I put them back and who dug my board? I don't know. It could have been Larry. Wasn't me. And one night they all ganged up on my dad and told him, either buy him his own board or we're going to drown him. My dad, I kind of thought about it a little bit. So he bought me a board for Christmas, 1957. It was a 8'7" solid balsa wood, 44-pound kind of semi-pintail board made by a guy named Dick Barrymore in Seal Beach. Dick made boards for a few years and then kind of got big making ski movies later, Barrymore. And it was a beautiful board. I remember waking up Christmas morning, it's just like, and it's like minus 50 degrees. There's a freezing cold offshore wind blowing, surf's about 2 foot, and I had to go ride it, The problem was I only weighed about 43 pounds. I mean, my board weighed 47. I weighed 43. I couldn't pick it up. So I had to pick up the tail, put it in the front, and then pick up the nose and put it in the front, pick up the tail and put it in the front, and walk it from our house across the beach and into the water. We had no wetsuits back then. And I was wearing, a pair of my dad's big old baggy kind of like swimming trunks. And I paddled out, and tried to catch a couple waves. And that was my first board. 8'7", 47-pound, solid balsa wood pintail.
What a great memory. Did your dad surf or no?
Oh, my dad couldn't even swim. Yeah, he liked to fish, but he couldn't swim. One time I had to save him. He actually waded out in the water too far. Had to go rescue this sucker.
Well, we're glad he did. So most of the people listening are surfers. That's a big part of my listenership, of course, being the Surf Strong Show. So they're really familiar with who you are and the legend that you are and a lot of your history. But for those that are just being exposed to who you are, can you just talk a little bit more about that early life growing up in Surfside and in Southern California? And, just as you kind of adventured into surfing, it was obviously surrounding you. Like, how did you gravitate towards that? What were some of your early memories of that? That first, new board story is awesome. So just kind of what was that like early for you?
Well, our house was right on the beach, lucky for me. And like my bedroom window, if I lifted my head up about 6 inches, I could see the surf. But I learned to know what the surf was like from the sound because we were so close. I could tell if it was big, little, if it had shape, it was like was peeling out, it was like it was closed out, and like it's windy, whatever. So I didn't even really have to open my eyes to tell the surf was. And also the cool thing was I could surf before school, after school, all day on the weekends, and so I could pretty much surf as much as I wanted. So I never really felt the need to ditch school or anything because I could surf at least an hour before going to school. And also, once I started, I couldn't stop. It was I was hooked. The first wave's free. After that, you pay.
Yeah.
I just surfed all the time. It became what I wanted to do all the time. My mom wanted me to take piano lessons. And it's like, oh man, I just want to surf. But she made me take piano lessons for 5 years anyway. I come home from school, I want to go surfing. No, you got your piano lesson. Ah, I'd bang around the thing for a half hour, with my teacher, and then I was like, I get done, okay, I'm out, paddle out.
You earned it. You earned it that way. Now, in that era right there, being right next to the beach, how many other surfers were around you? Was it something that was still pretty infrequent? Being at your school and then later in high school, what was kind of the surf culture like at that time?
Well, back then there was, a few of the guys that lived in my little town there surfed, mostly the older guys, and pretty much I was the only one my age. A couple other guys started a little bit later, and I hung out with them, so I was always trying to get somebody to go surfing with me. It's like I come home from school, be blown out, it'd be horrible. I wanted to go out. I go to the street to talk to my friend Steve. Hey, Steve, let's go out. Surf's really good. He goes, oh, it's blown out. It's terrible. Oh no, look, there's a left over there, and there's a peak there, and we can be getting some good rides. And sometimes I talk him into going out, and sometimes not. But the problem was my mom didn't like me to go surfing by myself. So sometimes I had to tell her, yeah, I'm going out with Steve down by his house. And so I'd go surf in front of Steve's house where my mom couldn't see me. But I surfed out in front of my house. She could always look out and see me out there. And my mom really didn't like the beach. She liked the mountains. My dad liked the beach. My mom liked the mountains. So we lived at the beach, but sometimes on the weekends we had to go to the mountains because my mom had a little cabin up there. And the only way they got me to go was I could go skiing. It's like I like to ski too. So they go, okay, you can go skiing if you go to the mountains with us weekend. Okay. But
now would that have been like up in Big Bear? Would that have been where those cabins were in Southern California there?
Yeah, exactly. I think they would take me to Snow Valley up by Big Bear and learn to ski. But I just pretty much wanted to surf all the time, and a few of the other guys surfed, and then kind of at about sixth grade, a lot of the other guys started surfing too. And I was sort of the first really cool guy. Before that, they were all geeks and kind of hippies and beatniks,
So as it kind of progressed there, and you're getting those years in of surfing, and you're starting to get a little older, and then there's this kind of starting to hear maybe about a contest here, or maybe what was that like starting to get into more of that structured kind of contest-based surfing? What was that transition like for you?
Well, at first there wasn't any contest, but then in 1959 they had the West Coast Championships in Huntington Beach, and I talked my dad into let me enter and taking me down there, and It was kind of big that first year. I remember I was a little bit scared, and I think I got third in my heat or something, and I was like, wow, I beat two guys. I was stoked. And a couple of the older guys that like Jack Haley, the guy that won the contest, was from Seal Beach, and I was in the same grade with his little sister. And he came up and he goes, yeah, you did pretty good. Stick with it, kid. Maybe in a couple of years you'll make something of yourself. It's like, oh wow, Jack Haley said I was going to do good. So I started entering all of the contests, and I don't think I even won a heat until 1962. And in the San Clemente Surfcapades, I actually won the contest, and it was kind of wow. I went from like not even winning a heat to winning a contest, and it was like. I remember Richard Harbor was like my first sponsor that gave me a free board, and he had taken me to the contest, and I was on the way home, and rather having him drop me off at my house, I had him drop me off down at the end of the street so I could walk up the street holding my trophy and like show everybody, hey, look, I won the contest. People go, what contest? And I go, the one down at San Clemente, the big contest. Look, see, I got a trophy.
This is my proof right here.
Cool. Well, that kind of like started the whole thing. Once I won one, it was like, okay, I'm unleashed. And I remember my dad said, yeah, this is really cool, but what are you going to do for a living when you grow up? I went, I'm going to be a surfer. He goes, how are you going to do that? And I went, I'll be a pro. He goes, they don't have pros. They will. And I'm going to be one.
Just basically determination to kind of figure it out, right? I mean, it didn't, obviously, that, we can talk about present day and path and understanding how you get from A to B, as difficult as it still is. You can see that possibility, but at that time you were making it up essentially, and it was just determination to kind of figure that out.
Yeah, pretty much. I knew that all I really wanted to do was surf, and I had to figure out a way to keep doing that because, I dream about it. I had posters all over my walls, and, I pretty much surfed all the time. And I wanted to figure out how to do that. And later, somehow, I lucked out and did.
Yeah. And it goes back to just like pulling your friend in, come on, no, it's blown out, and just like that stoke and just being that focused and determined drives us to achieve a lot of things, and when it's centered around something like passion, like surfing, it's not that hard to keep that fire going.
Yeah, I've always been kind of one of those guys that like focuses in on like one thing, to the complete ignoring everything else. I have friends that go, yeah, you're like good at that one thing, but you forget everything else.
Yeah, there's something about that. I guess it is a give and take, right? A well-balanced life or achieving something at a very high level. It's kind of trying to balance those two things is not easy.
No, it's not easy.
You haven't figured it out yet, huh? I was hoping you were going to tell me how to do that. So
somebody's got to do it.
So you're going forward now. You're starting into more contests now. It's starting to get to maybe larger contests. You're getting into, around, what is it? Like, I think Surfer Magazine, when was it? 68. You're named best surfer in the world. What's happening about that time in your career and your life? What's that level like for you now? Is it exciting? Is it exhausting? What's kind of going on around that era?
Well, I kind of, the whole thing sort of like grew. I think the first major contest I won was the U.S. Championship in the juniors in 1963. I was getting into high school, and we had a bunch of good surfers in our high school. Robert August, he was a star of Endless Summer, and he was student body president when I was a freshman, and he was like this, like he wore cashmere sweaters and Madras shirts, and had all the hot chicks, and it was like super cool and groovy. And I was the full like surf punk, and we were like kind of opposite. We didn't get along very good. He was like cooler. At least he thought he was cool. I thought I was cooler, but he was the cool guy. And I remember the first assembly we had when I was a freshman. I was late getting into the auditorium, and Robert was up on stage leading the flag salute. And I came in, and I was the only one in the back, and so I saw him up there. So I turned around, I mooned him, gave him a BA, and he started trying not to laugh in the middle of the flag salute. But unfortunately, the vice president was walking in right after, vice principal of the school was walking in right after me and caught me doing it and pulled me out by my ears. Took me to the office. Mr. Carroll, we don't do that kind of thing in high school. Oh, sorry, but Robert's a geek. Robert and I became really good friends later. I love Robert. In high school, we were not good friends. but
I think one of the things that kind of went along, Endless Summer comes out, it starts going on. I think you guys were doing a promotional tour. I think you were part of that promotional tour, which was pretty expansive, right? It was maybe even international, but certainly national. Talk about that a little bit.
Exactly. Well, like I said, the whole kind of like competition thing was sort of growing. And at the same time, surfing was going off. It went from, pretty much a bunch of bohemians in the 50s, but then early 60s, after Gidget came out and the beach party movies and stuff, it became kind of this fad. Guys that drive around with like boards in their car that didn't surf. Because like, yeah, we surf, we're cool. Score chicks, yay. Scoring chicks was a big part of it.
Well, that's a motivator.
So I got sponsored by Hobie, and Hobie was a big surfboard maker. And one of my first jobs was mowing down blanks. Now, what that meant was back then, the blanks they made the boards out of were big, thick things about 6 inches thick, and they glue the stringers up in the middle. And they were, the stringers would be sticking out both sides of the boards. My job was to go into the shaping shop at night after the shapers had finished for the day and line up, like we had like 11 shaping stalls. I'd line up blanks in every single one of them. And then I had like 3 different planers going, and I'd do like 3 boards and 3 boards, 3 boards, turn them over and do the other. What I did is I thinned them out into about the thickness that the shapers wanted to shape the boards. And so I'd take these like 6-inch blanks with stringers sticking out both sides and make them like 4 inches thick. And that was my job. And I could work from like anytime I wanted between when the time the shapers stopped to the time they started. So I would like do whatever I, had to do. I had an apartment in Dana Point, and I was still going to school in Huntington Beach. And so I would stay at my apartment on the weekends and sometimes during the school nights even, and drive back and forth. And one night I'm in there and I'm mowing down blanks, and it's like 2:00 in the morning or something. And I used to wear glasses because of the chips, just clear glasses, the chips that go in my eyes. It was before we had goggles. So one night I'm in there and I'm shaping, and my glasses are kind of like slipping down on my nose, kind of like, eh. And so I had the planer in one hand, and I went to push my glasses up and planed my arm. I mean, really, blood squirting out, big dark blood. And I'm like, blood's going all over the place. And I threw the planer into a pile of foam dust and ran out. I was 15. But I had my first car. I didn't have a driver's license yet. I think I had a learner's permit. And I go rushing to the hospital. I left the door open, left the lights on, the radio's blasting, planer's still going, blood's everywhere. And I was on my way to the hospital, but I started getting dizzy. I thought I was going to pass out. So I stopped on the way back. There was an apartment I'd stay in a lot of times, and one of the guys that lived there was Rodney Sumter, this Australian surfer. So I ran into the apartment to get somebody to take me to the hospital. Rodney was in there, but he had a date, and he didn't want to take me to the hospital. So I passed out. And he wrapped a towel around my arm and left me laying there on the floor because he had a date. And I woke up in the morning and the towel stuck to my arm and I'm like sick. And I got in the bathtub, soaked the towel off, had this big, gory wound in my arm, and I didn't know what to do. And Ronnie goes, maybe go down to Doheny and talk to Bob Moore or Peter Van Dyke, the lifeguards, maybe they can help you. So I went down there, and I think Peter Van Dyke was down there, and he goes, go to the hospital, man. That's like gnarly. So I go to the hospital, and they couldn't stitch it up because it'd been too late. So they had to like tape it together. And it's this kind of big wound. And so I go back and I go to the shop in Dana Point, and everybody's going, oh man, you got to go
So
talk
you got
to
murdered.
Everybody's been looking for you. They thought you got murdered. I went, what? Well, the Shapers came to work at 8 in the morning, and here's the lights on. Here's a planer still going and a bunch of bloody foam dust, blood all over. Door open. They're going, somebody murdered Corky. Oh no! So nobody knows what happened.
This?
So I had to go find Hobie, and I went, Hobie, I'm okay, and he was in his office with the general manager Jim Galloon, and they were sitting there, and Hobie goes, well, you're much more valuable to me surfing than you are mowing down blanks. So I'm going to put you on salary to do nothing but surf. He goes, from now on, you're a professional surfer. You just go surf every day. Maybe go visit some of the dealers or something, but just surf, gave me a salary. And Jim Gloom was sitting there, he goes, God, I guess this makes you the first real professional surfer. I went, cool. I told my dad. Now I go, Dad, I told you so. And I kind of
it took you all of 3 seconds to decide that was better than planing at night and possibly.
Oh, definitely. They thought I wasn't, they didn't want to give me any sharp objects. Power tools.
They're like, this might be cheaper. Put him on salary, less liability. This is a good path for everyone.
Exactly. And right about the same time, I got hired on by Jansen's Swimwear to be in, I think they had called the Jansen International Sports Club, where they had guys from different sports do their ads. Jerry West from the Lakers, and Don Meredith from the Cowboys, and Paul Horning, and Bob Cousy were some of the guys. And so I started doing ads with them. And so I had a sponsorship from them, and I had my sponsorship from Hobie. And there it was. And I was a pro.
Yeah.
Got my own apartment. Moved out of my parents' house.
Still in high school, right? You're still in high school at this point.
Yeah. I kept an apartment at Dana Point, and still went to high school in Huntington. But that's how the kind of the pro surfing thing for me started. It led into other stuff. There wasn't money in contests yet. The first contest that gave money was in 1965. It was the Tom Morey Invitational. It was a noseriding contest. So that ushered in money. And the contest didn't offer money until 1967, other than that. And then they had a international pro-am in Santa Cruz that started giving prize money. And after that, there became prize money. And in 1968, I won the surfer poll for best surfer. I was pretty stoked about that. How money coming into the sport sort of changed things was in the early days leading up until the late 60s, actually. When you went to a contest, it was more about going to the parties than it was the contest. They were always on a weekend, Friday and Saturday. And you'd go down there on Friday, and there'd be a party Friday night. And you'd surf in the contest Saturday, and there'd be a party Saturday night. And if you still could, you'd surf if you were still in it, you'd surf in the contest on Sunday. But it was a real social thing. And it was, it was really a lot of fun. And it wasn't quite so serious. Like, you'd root on your buddies unless you're in the same heat. But it's like, like my pal Mark Martinson, he'd be in heat. I'd be going, go Mark. But then when we got in the finals together, it was like he'd got a good ride, and I'd be going, fall off, catch a rail, break an arm. David and we was same thing. We were like really we were pals on the beach, but man, when we got in the water competing, it was a little different deal.
Yeah, being able to
Here,
switch
David,
that
you
off
take
too,
this close out.
Yeah.
Here, David, you take this close and I'll take the next good one.
Yeah. But also too at that level, like being able to turn that on and off. So like the heat's finishing, and then you come back, and then it can be that party and social again. There maybe not those pressures yet that come with, where it is now, and the sponsorship money, and the just to travel, just the travel costs involved. Just being able to have it where like I'm on now, and then I'm back off and having a good time with my social club again. Really,
Kind of. Cool thing about the beginning is sort of everybody, you knew people up and down the coast. So if you go somewhere, like if I go like to San Diego, I had people I could stay with. I go, oh, I'll go stay at Larry's house or somebody, and if I went to Santa Barbara, oh, I'll go stay with Rennie Yater or Bob Cooper or somebody. You always had a place to stay.
yeah.
Then surfing got so big, it's like you didn't know everybody anymore. There was like too many people to know. But and then kind of the more money got into it, the more serious it got, and sort of the less friendly it got. And guys didn't go to the parties anymore. They went seriously to compete in the contests. And, I was always kind of, I want to go to the party kind of guy. But
so as you're going through that, you're competing more. You're getting to a place where I believe you were 24 when you retired, essentially from professional surfing in that capacity of contest. What kind of spurred that on? What did you see as your path diverging from that to that point?
Well, surfing was getting bigger and bigger in the 60s, and there was, we were in the late 60s, we were making pretty good money, and I mean, not like today. I think the biggest year I had was like $35,000 or something. I was like, but in like 68 or 69, 67, that was a lot of money. Like my dad was a president of an electrical company. I made more than he did. It's like, it was a good living, but it peaked. I want to say probably around 1969-ish, 1970, and started. Vietnam came in, and attention kind of went off of surfing and into other things. It was a lot of, that's when there was the summer of love, and acid rock was coming in, and big concerts, and surfing was kind of fading in it as far as the national attention was on it. And it was growing in other places like Australia, but in the US, it was definitely kind of dropping off, and the available money to be made was less every year. And I was still pretty much making more than anybody else, but it was less every year. And also, the competition was getting kind of weird, because the people that were running the events were these kind of like, really, we're going to do it our way, and we don't care what you guys say. And the guys who were in the contest were kind of like going, you guys aren't really doing this right. You should be doing it a different way. And there was a lot of butting heads between the powers that be and the surfing associations and the surfers themselves. And I was sort of good at talking, and a lot of the other guys weren't. And it was always like became, Corky, you go tell them, well, you go tell them. Yeah, we're not good at it. You go tell them, and I would always be the one arguing with it, like, it's like 1 foot and blown out. Let's like postpone it till tomorrow, and we're having it. And so I got in some clashes with the powers that be, and I didn't like that. They didn't like that, and I became kind of known as the guy that argued, but I was always sort of trying to stick up for us, and that was becoming more prevalent. And the fact that the money was less, and it was harder, I became sort of less stoked. And hold on just a second, I was leading up to a point there and I lost it. Oh, and it's sort of at the same time, I had won a lot of contests by then. And there was sort of like this sort of like when you're coming up, they're all rooting for you, but when you've been there for a long time, they don't want you there anymore. They want the new guy. And it became harder and harder to win events. It's like instead of, winning, I had to win outright. There was like I didn't get any close calls anymore. In fact, I wasn't even getting calls where I should have won because I'd won too much. And so that was a problem. And I wasn't as stoked as I was a few years before that. And I sort of was like getting stoked on playing music. And I started playing in clubs and bars. I had a little band. And that sort of became more, I was more interested in that. And I still wanted to surf all the time because I never stopped my love to surf, but I stopped having the love to compete. I wasn't liking it. And the problem for me when I first got into music, it was like I was playing music, but I wasn't like playing seriously. I think I played it at a couple surf movies during the intermission with a friend of mine that was a good blues harmonica player. We'd do a few songs or something, but it wasn't something I was thinking I was going to pursue. And then a friend of mine, it was Jack Haley, had a bar in a restaurant in Sunset Beach, and he called me up one day. He goes, "Hey, I hear you play the guitar." And I went, "Yeah." And he goes, "I need somebody to play in my restaurant 3 nights a week. You want the job?" And I went, "Yeah, sure." So I'm like, cool, I got a gig. Then all of a sudden I realized, but I guess I'm going to have to sing. And I didn't sing at the time. My mother had been a singer and it was like really good. And always wanted me to sing, but I hadn't really done it. So I bought one of those, 100 songs that you hope you never hear by a guy that can't sing songbooks. And I learned, some songs. And so I went in, I started playing at Captain Jack's 3 nights a week and playing guitar and singing. And I could play guitar pretty well, but my singing was lacking. But I did it anyway. It was like, what it's like people would go, "Hey, Corky," it's like, "Hey, play guitar, but you shouldn't sing." But I did it. And I started taking singing lessons and voice coaching and I tried and tried. And I was getting a little bit better and a little bit better. And I got to the point where I could kind of get away with it and, put together a little band and we started playing a little bit more important gigs. And then, but people would come more out of curiosity. It's like, let's go see how bad he sucks kind of deal. And I was skiing a lot. And I had bought a trailer up at Mammoth and I would drive back and forth. And at the end of 1972, they had the World Surfing Contest in San Diego. And for the most part of it, they held the event up in Oceanside because it was a real steep angle south swell and it was flat in San Diego. But Oceanside was catching it and it might have been like 3 to 4 feet and fairly decent beach break. Up the coast, it was huge. I remember getting up one morning and driving to Newport Beach. Newport Point was like 15 feet. It was going off. They had pictures of it in Surfer Magazine, called it Pipeline Comes to Newport. It was unbelievable. But then I'd like drive back and surf, 3 foot blown out in the afternoon. Well, on the day of the semifinals and finals, they moved the contest back to Ocean Beach. And it was 1 foot. I mean, it was terrible. And I remember they sent us out in our semifinal heat. It was high tide. It was lapping on the beach. And there was a little sandbar outside that about every now and then one little wave would kind of lap over on the sandbar. It was a 20-minute semifinal heat. So we went out and we're all sitting there by this little sandbar waiting for a wave. Nothing came for about 10 minutes. So everybody else, this was in 6-man heats in those days, paddled in and we're catching these little like inch waves right by the beach, just standing up and like doing something, hitting the beach. And I stayed out by the little sandbar going, well, if one wave comes in, I'll get a better score than all that I could get on, 5 of those by the beach. So I sat out by the sandbar and no waves came. 20 minutes went by. I didn't catch a wave. I paddled in. I went, if this is what surfing competition has come to, I'm done. And I went, this is my last contest. And that's what made me retire, was the fact that they actually would hold a world surfing championship in 1 foot waves when they could be 20 minutes up the coast and it was 4 to 5 feet and surfable, because it had to be in San Diego.
Yeah.
The rest of it could be in San Diego County, but for some reason, probably commitments to the city or television or whatever it was, it had to be in the city of San Diego. So as far as I was concerned, that was stupid. And I wasn't looking at the financial implications for the city. I was looking at how it affected me and everybody else in the contest. And I just said, I'm done. It's come to this. I'm finished. And so, I kind of was getting interested in more in doing the music, and I was like to ski. I went, I'm gonna go spend a season up in the mountains and ski. And so I rented my house out, and I went up to see Dick Barrymore in Sun Valley, Idaho. That's where he lived, making ski movies. Rented an apartment. I got a job working in the ski boot factory on the rivet machine, and at night at the chart house as a dishwasher. And I moved my family to Sun Valley. We're going to spend the winter. We wound up spending 3 years.
Wow.
I figured I was playing music on the weekends. I was washing dishes. I was riveting ski boots. And I was happy as a clam at high tide. And figured it was a good way for me to get away from the beach and sort of developed the music a little bit more, where people weren't coming to see me because of who I was. They were just coming because they were coming for drinks, and I was in the bar, and I could get better without the scrutiny of my friends coming out. Hey, we knew it. You suck.
Now, during that 3-year stretch, little to no surfing then, because you were up there. Were you traveling back at all, or was it pretty much just skiing and music?
Well, actually, I surfed quite a bit. Not during the winter. I skied all winter, but during the spring and fall week, it was called slack season. Everything would close in the mountains. I would come back and stay at the beach for like 6 weeks and surf. And then in the summer, it was a 10-hour drive from Sun Valley to Seaside, Oregon. I would go surf in Oregon in the summers. So every few weeks, I'd go like 3 or 4 days and go surf in Oregon.
Nice.
And it was great. I really liked it. And then finally, I started craving surfing more, and I was sort of getting a little bit better at the music. And so I came back to the beach and put together a band, and got serious about music and surfed. And a couple years into it, I got hired by Surfer Magazine to be ad director. So I could do all the stuff I wanted to do. I could still play music. Surfer Magazine was a great job for me because I love to surf, and I was pretty good at selling ads. And I was a surfer for 10 years, and skiing and surfing and doing music for the most part.
Now, at that point, I think you even produced albums as well, right? Put albums out and maybe do some touring with those, and went pretty deep down into the music part.
Yeah, I got a couple record deals, and had a couple albums and some singles, and I sort of got to the middle. And I explain this one is, in music you can sort of make money two ways: playing in bars or being big.
Yeah.
You get to the middle and you play like the opening act for like concerts, or you tour the clubs, like we played the Troubadour and the Golden Bear and the Ice House and those kind of clubs, and did a little tour of the East Coast. But that's hard making money because you don't get paid a whole lot for that. I remember the first time I played the Golden Bear, it was a great night. We had a sellout, and I think we were getting paid like $800, but there were 9 people in my band. We had 3 girl singers, the Corkettes, and we had 6 band members. And so we were only like making $90 a piece. And at the end of the night, I went up to get paid, and the guy said, okay, that'll be $347. I went, $347? I thought we were making $800. He goes, no, you owe us $347. But why? And he goes, your bar tab. I go, bar tab? I thought the drinks were free. And it's like, they had put like a fruit bowl and like snacks and like Cokes and beers and stuff like that in our dressing room and said, if you want anything else, just order it. And so like we ordered some pizzas and I think somebody ordered a bottle of wine and we had some drinks. And at the end of the night, we owed them 300 whatever it was, $47. And I didn't have it. And I went, well, I'll have to come back and pay it tomorrow. They wouldn't let us take our instruments. They held our instruments hostage until I went back and paid the $347. It was the only club that ever did that. With all the other clubs we played at, the fruit bowls were free.
You're trying to make it on both sides, the front of the house and the back of the house. Can't have both.
Yeah. Most of it was like whatever they gave us in the dressing room was usually like soft drinks, beers, and fruit baskets were free. But if you wanted to get bar drinks, it was like half price or something. But not the Golden Bear, man. It was all full price, including the apples. It was like a dollar an apple. It was a hardcore lesson in rock and roll.
Yeah. It's not all glamorous rock and roll lifestyle. Not all glamorous. I put questions out to my audience and listenership, knowing that you were coming on, and I got a flood of questions back from them, which is great. So I'm going to kind of go through some of these questions and just get your take on them, and see where the questions lead. Some good stories and some just talking some shop a little bit. So, do you have favorite surfers to watch now? Do you watch professional surfing at all?
Every now and then I watch, I was following the tour for a little bit. I've been a Kelly Slater fan, I knew him when he was a little kid. His mom used to work for us when I had a clothing line. She was our secretary. And I used to take Kelly and Sean and Steve, the three brothers, surfing when they were like 9, 10, and 11. And so I remember I was announcing a contest in Florida, and Kelly was in the Minnehoonies, and he was the best surfer in the contest. And I remember saying on the loudspeaker, this kid's really good. He can be world champion one day. Mark my words. You heard it here first, folks. Nobody remembers that. But I always bring it up and go, remember, I was the first one that... They go, yeah, so what, Corky? We don't care. But so I followed his career, and I watched some of the events because I was rooting for him. And but it's really hard for me to watch the events because I kind of don't agree with the way they score. I'll watch one and I'll see a guy just get a screaming long, barrel and, a bunch of power turns and, great ride, and he'll get a 4. And then I'll see the next guy will take off and they'll do a big aerial move and wind up in the whitewater going straight off and get an 8. And in my mind, yeah, the aerial move was really cool, but it wasn't as good as the guy that got, went 300 yards at Mach speed and got 3 barrels, but they score higher for one move than, that's my take on it. And so I'd watch the events and I'd get frustrated with oh man, that's wrong. And so, but I'm not like old school. I'm like ancient school.
A couple schools back is what you're saying.
I'm like way back there, in black and white. But it's better now than when I was doing it because we had 6 guys in a heat, and they give you 12 minutes, and you had to catch a minimum of 5 waves, and it was tough. It's like now they're out there for a half hour, only 2 guys, and they only have to catch 2 waves, and they got jet skis taking them back out. How cool is that? We had to paddle back out. I remember days God, I'm not going to get back out to catch another wave. There's a closeout set. So it's admittedly, and also they're making jillions of dollars. It's I'm jealous. guy gets like 30-second mix more money than I made in a whole year. I was like, no, it's
A little different scope now.
Oh,
No
I'm
doubt.
totally jealous, but I don't watch all of the events, but I watch some of them, and now just sort of, I think Kelly's at the end of his career. Finally, I thought he was going to like be surfing pro into his 60s. I mean, what an amazing, amazing career that dude has had. You know, it's
Yeah, just from the
when he's
physical,
winning contests in his 50s.
Yeah,
I'm going, God, I bailed out too young.
it is amazing. I mean, there's obviously you could talk endlessly about what he's accomplished, and just as a from the fitness side, you know, being what my background is, just to watch him stay at that level physically and mentally focused to be able to train to maintain that for that length of time, it's just hard to comprehend what it takes to physically be at that peak for that long. I mean, the work he puts into is just, it's unprecedented. You know,
Yeah,
skill for sure. You know, what you come genetically to the table absolutely contributes, but the determination and the work ethic of that just on the physical side itself is just, it's amazing.
And I think he's sort of experiencing this sort of the same thing I did at the end of my career. You know, I watched some events he's in, and I swear he won the heat, and he doesn't. You know, he's at the point where he has to win hands down to win. They're not giving him any close decisions anymore. You know, so yeah, I'm a big fan of is like Kai Linney and like Laird Hamilton. These guys that are like, you know, Laird blew my mind. You know, like I used to babysit Laird when he was a little kid. You know, we played checkers, and if he lost, he'd hit me over the head with a checkerboard. I love Laird. When Laird was first doing the toe ends, and you know, just like getting air and like, you know, trying to hit the helicopter, and I was just going, okay, this is a whole different deal altogether. And he was, you know, windsurfing and paddleboarding, and you know, it's like he took surfing to a whole different level. You know, I went like Laird is sort of like on a whole level than anybody else, sort of like Kelly in a different way. Yeah. And now this guy Kai Linney, I watch him. He sort of took it where Laird went and is going further. And you know, I'll be like looking at Instagram or something, and here's like Kai Linney, you know, doing air flips on, you know, 300,000 foot waves.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it's jaw dropping is even an understatement when you see that.
The size of waves these people are riding these days is unbelievable. I remember being out at Waimea Bay when it'd be 20 feet. I remember when I was a little kid, and the first time I caught what George Downing, you know, said, you got a genuine 20-footer there, kid. You know, it's like 20-footer. That thing was 300 foot, George. I thought 20 feet. That's the size of the Empire State Building. That's like a little King Kong on there.
So that leads us in perfectly into this next question here, which is, what if you can pinpoint one or two experiences? What's the most terrifying wave you've ever ridden through your surfing?
Most terrifying wave?
Yeah.
It's kind of a long story, but there's this place on the windward side of Oahu called Seventh Hole, and it's in Kahuku, and it breaks way out on a reef off of the Kuku golf course, off the Seventh Hole. And if you see whitewater out there, it's probably like 10 feet because it's so far out. And one day the North Shore was closed out. It was really big, but the wind was blowing with Kona winds, which is offshore on the windward side. So me and a guy named Peter Johnson and another guy named Chris Prouse from San Diego drove over there to check it out. And you could see these perfect lefts peeling off out there. Look like Ala Moana. I'm going, God, it's like 15 feet and perfect. And George Downing pulled up to check it out. And I go, what do you think, George? He goes, it's really big out there. I go, what do you think, like 15 feet? And he goes, no, I don't know. That's pretty big. I go, looks good. You know, let's go out. And he goes, you guys go out. And if I see a good ride, I'll be out. Okay, so let's go out. So we paddled out. Well, it was about 80 feet. It was so big. then, we didn't want to get near it. But the problem is as we got out there, it was getting bigger. And we paddled over a set, and all of a sudden there was like sets and bigger sets and bigger sets. And we kept paddling over sets, and they would close out behind us, and the channel was closing out. And we kept going up further and further and bigger and bigger and further and further and bigger and bigger. And pretty soon we're like way out in the middle of the ocean. You could hardly even see the beach. And Peter didn't make it out. He got caught inside on the first set. So it was just Chris and I, and we're out to sea. We're finally out past the waves, and it's a gray, kind of almost rainy afternoon, and nobody's around. We're out there and we're scared, and it's like a couple hours go by, and I'm kind of hoping a boat will come by or something and we can like wave them down, because I didn't want to try to catch a wave or paddle back in there. But now it's getting like 3:00, and it's going to get dark at like 6. Chris goes, "What are we going to do?" I guess, "Well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to wait for a set. As soon as the set's over, we're going to paddle as hard as we can, as far in as we can, because the sets were maybe 20 minutes apart. And maybe we can get in far enough that a wave will break and we can catch a big whitewater and like right into the beach." Okay, cool. So set finishes. We paddle as hard as we can for like 20 minutes, and a big set comes. But the first wave of the set is right where we are. And so and the next wave is like, let's take it. And so we took off on the first wave of the set, and that was really big. And Chris was in front and I was in back, and I stood up to make the drop, and he tried to do it land down, and there were big bumps on the face of the wave because the wind was so hard. And I kind of bounced down the face of the wave and kind of aimed towards the channel and proned out. And Chris got bounced off his board, dropping in, and his board like almost hit me, went over my head. And I was able to hold on in the whitewater and kind of deep water and prone the wave all the way in next to Chris's board. So I got Chris's board, we got on the beach, and Peter was on the beach, and Chris is out there somewhere, I go, "What are we going to do?" I said, "I hope he makes it in." So about 45 minutes later, he came swimming in. He smart enough, he stayed in the whitewater and swam in, but he was out, really, really far when he fell off. And it was like, that was the most terrifying surfing experience that I ever had.
Yeah, that deep, that just being out in that ocean part, knowing that swell is there and you kind of know where you are, that of course is an extreme example of that. But for surfers of any level, they out slightly outside that comfort zone, and then it starts to go, and you're in that open ocean. That feeling is the same.
These waves were like twice, 3 times bigger than anything I'd ever seen at Waimea Bay or Point Surf Makaha.
Wow.
It was really big, and just the wind blowing. There was like 8-foot chops on the face of the waves. It was scary.
Yeah. So here I have this question that got submitted. So there's a little caveat in here. It says, "Not sure if it's true." So we'll go with that. Ask him about surfing Waimea at night in 1968 with Jock Sutherland high on LSD. True or not true?
Not true.
Wait, I had like 4 or 5 people comment on it saying, "Oh man, that's going to be an awesome story if it's true."
It wasn't night. It was daytime.
Care to expand on that story?
Well, I just remember paddling out, and you see like big water drops, like big globules, like they look like abalone shells going whoa, whoa, whoa. The rest of the experience is pretty vague.
Yeah, I can only imagine the intensity of it being, obviously it's Waimea Bay, and then things like depth perception, those being changed. This is a separate analogy almost, but a few years ago, not huge, but big, focused for me, and I had just come off a head cold, and so like my ear wasn't clearing still. And I got out in the water here. I'm on the central coast of California, and the water's always cold. So I'm always wearing a hood. And so that intensified that. So like my equilibrium was off. And I remember having the intensity of like trying to focus and trying to get away. And at this point, I was just going to go back in, and I was trying to get away, and the equilibrium being off and all of the senses being different. Like, it was not really frightening, but it was just, it just threw me for everything. Like, everything I did, I had to be so focused and precise on. I'd imagine it'd be pretty similar, just everything changing, you know, depth wise.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of all in your perception. You know, it's like everything, you know, sometimes you're in an altered reality and you think you're like doing really cool. Oh man, like so soulful. Whether you are or aren't, you know, in your own mind, you know, it's pretty cool. Wow.
Oh, that was amazing. That was amazing what I just did. So what would you say, all these decades surfing, still surfing, what would you say is the secret or kind of those important aspects of longevity in surfing? Whether that's physical or mental or maintaining the stoke, what's important in there for longevity?
Well, I guess all of that, but maintaining the stoke would probably be the most. I mean, you know, I've had a lot of friends that were, you know, surfers along the way that phased out for one reason or another. Either it was like they were too busy with their job, or they just physically couldn't do it anymore, or the crowds got so bad that anger overweighed the stoke. One thing or another. I always tried to put myself in a position that I could surf whenever I want to. So I've like sacrificed a lot of income in order to have ways to surf. I always had jobs like working a surfer or whatever it was. I taught tennis for a while, and you know, I would wait table, whatever it was, so I could surf all the time. Manage surf jobs, and because I always wanted the freedom to be able to surf, and thank goodness I pretty much always been able to surf. Like I got lucky for a while, like when I was doing Miller Lite, you know, it was like I think 11 years or 13 years with them. And it was like really good income, and so I could just like, you know, book myself into a month in Tavarua. So I've always been able to surf, and the only thing that holds me back now is just like, you know, I can't do it as much as I want to do it just because physical stuff. You know, my back is kind of shot. I have spinal stenosis really bad, so it hurts, but it doesn't hurt enough to keep me from going out. But it got to the point where I had to switch to a stand-up paddleboard because I couldn't stand up. Couldn't go in from laying down to stand up, and I didn't want to. You know, I was like, oh, sweepers. I never hope I'm never going to be one of them. But then I became one enough and started liking it. It's like, well, you know what? This isn't really that bad. You know, it's pretty cool. Actually, I think my SUP is better than any longboard I ever had. Yeah. It goes faster. It turns harder. You can ride the nose better. It isn't as good as a shortboard. You know, I mean, I would rather be at the end of when I was prone surfing, I was on a 710 quad, and it was for me, you know, it was a geezer's shortboard. Yeah. And now I'm on an 8.8 SUP, a Bonzer SUP. So it's sort of like the most high performance that I can get at 75. Yeah. But the thing is fast, and it feels really good. So it's, you know, I'm, you know, stoked. I just, yeah, I'm dealing with a pacemaker and AFib, and, you know, I weigh 874 pounds.
I'm definitely of the mind that whatever keeps me connected to the ocean, I'm in. If that's a raft, if that's body surfing, if that, like, I just want to maintain that connection. I'll you know, prone surf as long as I can, but being able to evolve for there and prepare to keep surfing and do that, just the connection to the ocean. I mean, that's the part that just, you know, it just makes me a better version of myself, is just getting that feeling of being present in the ocean. So I'm of the school of however you can do that, do it.
Well, what kind of got keeping me stoked is art. You know, I painted a little bit in high school, but never got serious about it. And then when I worked at Surfer Magazine, we moved into a new building and we had a bunch of office space in the warehouse that nobody was using. And I was interested in doing airbrush. And so they let me set up an airbrush station back in the warehouse. So I started doing airbrush and ink paintings, and I'd sell them in the gallery down in Dana Point Harbor. And I did pretty good with them and really liked it. But then when I left Surfer to do other things, I didn't have the space to do it. So I stopped painting. And I moved to Mexico 20 years ago. We're taking in guests that would come and stay with us. And, I'd take them surfing and give them drinks and tell them stories. One of the guests was a painter, and he left an acrylic set with me. You want to try these? I go, sure. So I went and bought a couple of canvases and painted a couple of dumb pictures. And, that was kind of cool. And I'd hang them on the walls. And every now and then somebody would buy one. I go, wow, that's really a cool painting. How much you want for that? And I don't know, like $300. I go, cool. And I started selling them, but I wasn't really all that serious about it. They were just kind of fun, funky paintings. And I liked doing them. So I did them. And maybe I'd sell 5 paintings, 6 paintings a year or something, but it was kind of cool. And then it's about a year ago now, at this time, I was doing my surf adventure thing. And I was doing it on an every other month basis. I had sold my interest in our house at the beach, and we had moved into Ixtapa, in our little house where we are now. I have my cave here. It's my art studio, music studio, closet, and office. On one side, I have art, and on the other side, I have music. See the microphone stuff. Yeah. Over here's a closet. Over there's clothes. And
multi-purpose.
And I started getting to the point where it wasn't easy for me to do the surf adventures anymore, because I couldn't take beginners out. I can't push people in the waves. And because of the hard stuff, I don't have the energy I had. I'm usually a one wave. I'll paddle out and I'll wait for a really good wave and I'll ride it all the way in. Then I catch my breath. And so I felt I couldn't be as good a host as I was, before. And I was really starting to paint a lot. I thought maybe I can segue into doing art. And I started getting serious about doing the art and phasing out of doing the surfing adventures. And so I started posting the paintings on my Facebook page, and people started buying them. And so then you know what? This is it. I'm gonna phase out of my surfing adventure deal and become a full-time surf artist. So I do surf art for the most part, not always, and I stoked on it. I mean, now I dream about surfing all the time. Now I'm dreaming about painting. I get a painting in my mind. I wake up and it's like, I come in here and I paint it, and I'm really, really stoked on it. And so I'm as stoked now as I was 15 going surfing. It's like I jump onto a canvas and it's the same thing as paddling out in the morning. It's like, you don't know what's going to happen. Every canvas is different. Every wave is different. Some you get a glorious barrel and it's really cool. You come out the end, you go, yay, look what I painted. Some you hit the rocks and trash it, or paint over it and do something else. So cool thing with painting is you can always paint over it.
Yeah. It's also like it has that similarity of presence too. That's
hard
always
to peel yourself off the rocks.
Yeah. It has that part where it just keeps you right in that moment. Like I don't paint, but I play music. It's really more just meditative for me as more than performance, but it just keeps me in that place. I would imagine that painting is similar to like that surfing. Like to surf, like you have to be right there. You can't be thinking about what you're gonna do or what you have to take care of, or you're just gonna be right on the rocks. You have to be in that moment. I would imagine painting would give you that same feeling of presence. Like I need to be right in this experience right now. That's really powerful.
Oh, exactly. It's that you really got to concentrate. I mean, I'll just put on a little background music and just fully focus into it. In fact, a lot of times I'll paint with my headphones, because I'm kind of deaf. I wear hearing aids, and so I'll have some little music going and I'll paint, and my wife will be banging on the door and I want to hear. It's like, I've been calling you for 45 minutes. Oh, sorry, baby. And you mentioned music, and I sort of forgot to mention that I'm still playing music too. When I moved down here, I started playing in the local clubs and bars and stuff. And at first I was held a regular, 4 night a week gig, but then that was too much because then I'd be tired in the morning when I wanted to surf. So now I do dinner concerts. I'll play at hotels or restaurants, and it'll be a dinner show deal where there'll be dinner, and I'll do like an hour and a half, 2 hour set, and pretty much tell stories and combination of original stuff and covers songs. People want to hear songs they know, and I have a new album out on Darla Records. Well, it's not new; it's about a few years old now, called Blue Mango. And when it sort of leads into another thing, when I came out with the album, one of the songs I had was a Blue Mango bar, and I was looking for a name for the album. And I'll call it Blue Mango. So came out with it, and a friend of mine from the South Bay, Joel Salzman, was down visiting, and he goes, "That Blue Mango's a good name. You ought to do something with it." And I go, "Like what?" And he goes, "Well, maybe like make it into a surf company, Blue Mango Surf." And I go, "Well, that's a great idea, but I live in Zihuatanejo, Mexico. How am I going to do that?" And he goes, "Well, I don't know." I go, "Why don't you do it?" And he goes, "Great idea. We'll be partners." And so he put together Blue Mango Surf Company, and I give him ideas and he follows through on them. And we got a shaper, Jose Barahona, which is like one of the great shapers. And we have Blue Mango surfboards, we have t-shirts, we have hats, and so Blue Mango Surf, it's become a company, and it's fledgling, but we're doing okay because we do like custom boards. There's no pop outs or anything. People order boards and we can't shape them. And I designed a bunch of boards, and we got Mike Purpose on board. He's with us. We do these kind of legend series where Mike and I will design a board, and it's doing pretty good. So Blue Mango has sort of become a thing. And so I sort of got Blue Mango, I got art, and still play music. And I'm still involved in the surf adventure business. I turned it over to the guy that bought my share of the house, Speed Dog John Ford, and he's running Corky Carroll Surf Adventures, or now it's Casa de Surf Adventures. But I still show up, have dinner with a guest, drink, tell stories, and maybe paddle out and surf a wave or two with them. Or if they want, I'll watch them surf and give them some tips. A lot of people want surf coaching. Some people didn't when I was doing that. It's like, at first I just assumed everybody did. Remember this one guy he paddled in and I went, you could if you did this, and he goes, "I don't need coaching. I surfed for 30 years. And he got kind of upset. So I stopped offering it unless somebody asked for it. It's like,
you're like, "Whoa, okay, hey, no problem, no problem."
I'd really like to be a better nose rider. What can I do? Oh, put your weight on your front foot, whatever it was. So I'm still involved with the surf adventure business, and I paint, and you can buy my paintings. They're all for sale. Just check my Facebook pages, and I'm on Instagram too, or Corky Surf at AOL.com. You can get a hold of me.
And we'll put links in of Corky's Facebook page and Instagram, and ways to get a hold of him, and the things that he's doing, and some of his art up there too. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Just did that one.
And you're painting it most every day. How long do you generally, and it's going to flex, but you start with an empty canvas and you come and you finish a piece of art. How long does it usually take you, that arc?
It all depends. I like to paint in the morning first thing. And so generally my day will be, I'll wake up, I'll check my messages. I do a Facebook post every morning, get my coffee, and I start painting. And I pretty much will paint until 1 or 2 o'clock. Mm-hmm. And then I'll take my siesta. Yeah, maybe I'll come back and paint a little bit more. And to early evening, and then hang out with my wife and watch TV or whatever we do, you know. And um, sometimes I'll play music. Um, I'll maybe paint a little bit, and then I'll be in a certain place in a painting where I need to stop because I do a lot of wet and dry stuff where I blend and I need everything to be wet, but then something has to dry. So my table that I paint on is my guitar case. I just move the paints and break out my guitar, strap on it, and I can just turn around. And right over there is my mic and all my stuff. I can plug in, and all my songs are recorded into a box. And so my guitar and me are live, and all of my songs I have recorded, so I can pull up whatever songs I want to do, and practice. And so I keep my setup. I have about 30 songs I do when I play live. I have about 50, but I do about 30 at a time. So I keep up my main songs. And so probably in the course of a week, I will paint 6 hours a day, play music 2 hours a day, sleep an hour or two a day, and then for my nap. The rest of the time, eat, hang out with my wife. My wife's a Zumba teacher, so she's off teaching Zumba classes a lot, and so we sort of do our own stuff during the daytime, and then merge at about 6 or 7 o'clock for night. Well, sometimes I drive her to Zumba.
Sounds pretty good. You worked yourself into a pretty nice setup there.
Yeah, I'm really happy right now with everything. My wife's amazing. She's beautiful, and I'm loving doing the paintings and playing the music, and I can still surf a little bit, and it's pretty good. As far as how long it takes me to do a painting, sometimes 3 hours, sometimes a week.
Yeah.
It just depends on how intricate it is.
Yeah. Corky, thank you so much for being part of the Surf Strong Show. I really do appreciate you taking the time. It's been great, just chatting with you and getting to know a little bit more about you. And I'm stoked that you are where you are. Like you're living the dream, my friend. That's what we're all striving for. Put our days together and fill it with creative output and be connected to the ocean. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us on the Surf Strong Show. To find out more about the Surf Strong Fit programs and if they're a good fit for you, go to surfstrongfit.com/programs. You can also direct message me on either Facebook or Instagram, where I'm at Surf Strong Fit. I'm your host, Greg Finch. I'd like to remind you to like, comment, subscribe to this and all of our episodes of the Surf Strong Show wherever you get your podcasts. For all show notes and links that we talk about in the episodes, videos of the podcast, you can go to surfstrongfit.com/podcast for this and all the past episodes. Thanks for joining us. It really means a lot.